And good evening, fellow travellers in space and time, and welcome back to the Writing Community stream. It is good to be here once more. How are we all doing? It's Monday, of course. It's Monday, which is good. Which is good stuff. So, right. So I am hoping that the chat is working. Woo! I think I fixed it. This is good. This is a good thing. Awesome stuff. So anyway, we are back, and the chat is on the screen, which is even better. This is really, really good. So anyway, let's start off in good streams tradition. Who is here? Well, Sothy Saint Going Well is here. Hello, Sothy Saint Going Well. An excellent username, by the way. Wintermute GB is here as always. It's always good to see Wintermute GB keeping me honest. Come on, the Theraphoba here is one of our longest term Twitch followers since before the moon went into orbit around the Earth, probably. That's how long some of this stuff's been going now. Come on, the JL88, also a long term. This is brilliant to see you as well. Haunted Loaf is here as well. Alan RP42 is here as well. This is really, really good. Sean O'Connor is here with his Alexa. No, we won't do that. Kelly Baglar is here. Hello, Kelly Baglar. That's awesome to see you as well. Chris Viking as well, another long term person. This is really, really good. DJ Squibby. Iraqis 2012 here, fresh from the hard-coded invasion. Sorry, I will stop doing that joke at some point. The Shadow Ivan is here as well, so this is all good. Well done, everybody. And I'm very pleased to have got the chat working again. So the technical solution to that, for any of you who was interested, was basically to log out of Streamlabs and log back in again. That seems to be the essence of my technical prowess in solving this particular problem. However, I did actually solve it, so hey, well, you can't really argue with that, can you? Drew just revealed my age, older than the moon. Well, actually, I came up. There's an interesting theory about the extinction of the dinosaurs that I was told today. And you know that the moon is receding slowly from the Earth by about, I don't know, a few millimeters a year or half an inch or something like that. And obviously that means, at some stage in the far distant future, the moon will actually leave Earth orbit and go off and orbit the sun or do something else. Or go on adventures maybe. Like Space 1999. But obviously if it's going further away, that means it must have been closer in the past. And so if you wind back time, I don't know exactly how far, let's say 65 million years ago, the explanation for the end of the dinosaurs can be quite figured out, because if you've got these very, very tall dinosaurs on the Earth and they look up and go, where's the moon? And then suddenly, bang! Oh, there it is. You figured out A, why the moon is receding from the Earth, and B, why the dinosaurs are no longer with us, and why only the small creatures who'd kept their heads down, basically, still survived to this day. So that's my theory on the extinction of the dinosaurs. I don't know how scientifically accurate that is, but it sounds entirely plausible to me. But yes. Anyway, it is Monday. How are we all doing? It is good to be back, and we shall doubtless get on to the topic. Or maybe I do have a topic. And we will definitely get to the topic at some point in the future. Have a Boomer is here as well, which is good to see. Thank you all for turning up and joining me for my waffly stream. I think the dinosaurs just nuked themselves. I think they just kept smoking. So actually, they haven't got long enough arms, have they? I can't get my cigarette. Drew's tall tale histories, yes. Lucky Luigi is here as well. Good evening. Good to see you. The moon was like a bus wing mirror beating all the time. Pretty much, basically that's it, yes. Objects in space may be closer than they appear. Something like that anyway. So I don't know. Who knows? I like dinosaurs just in general terms. It's interesting actually. It's one bit of observation about life on Earth, is that all of the really big cool stuff no longer exists. The biggest, I think I'm right in saying, the biggest creature on the Earth today, or at least the heaviest creature on the Earth, there is an African elephant. I think it's the biggest land animal. I'm not sure if rhinos or Indian elephants get close, but I think it's the African elephant. But when you compare an African elephant to some of the stuff that has lived on the planet, I suppose I'm talking about land things here as opposed to blue whales, which obviously do exist in the sea. that the stuff we got on land today isn't actually all that big. It's on the scale of 1 to 10 in terms of the biggest things that have lived on land in the Earth's history. Then we're not really much above a 2 right now, because we haven't got any really really big stuff, which is a big shame. I mean, I don't know what the world would be like if we still had a giant Apatosaurus still wandering around. Probably would have eaten them. Or hunted them to extinction. But it would be nice to think that actually a massive Apatosaurus plonking around. I mean, I know these things weighed like 700 tons. You probably don't want one of those nuzzling up against your house or your car. But there has been some impressive stuff on our planet, and we haven't got it anymore, which does seem a bit sad. Jay, I consider myself an expert on dinosaurs. I mean, I've had to be because I have a 6-year-old. Isn't it funny how kids love dinosaurs? I don't know what it is. Because I mean, and it's specifically dinosaurs. I mean, I suppose there's quite a lot of material about dinosaurs available, aren't there? If you go to any big natural kind of history type museum, there's always some dinosaurs in it. Whereas actually there are some quite impressive creatures, mammals actually, that came along after the dinosaurs, when the dinosaurs were wiped out, and quickly filled the sort of evolutionary niches that the big dinosaurs had. I mean, you've got massive birds, for example, and huge, great big, fierce saber-toothed things. I can't remember any of the names of them. I'm by no means a biologist, and there's a lot of big stuff that kind of existed after dinosaurs, but nobody's ever heard of them because they don't have the cool factor that dinosaurs do. Massive giant sloths and things, or sloths to be how you pronounce it, that were really enormous. And you probably wouldn't want to meet one, but nobody knows what they are. At least generally people don't know what they are unless you kind of look them up, because they just don't have the fame. I mean, everyone's heard of a T-Rex, haven't they? Because it's a massive, scary, great big enormous lizard that eats lawyers. Maybe it's the films, I don't know. I mean, it's just dinosaurs, isn't it? They just sound cool. Glenn says, I really miss the big ground sloths around when I was a kid. Yeah, you and I remember the T-Rex as well, don't we, Glenn? Those were the days. Yeah, it tastes like chicken. We do have dinosaurs today, says Sean. They infest Westminster. Yes, you're not wrong, my friend. You're not wrong. Oh dear. I just missed the hedgehog. Wait. Actually, we've got quite a lot of hedgehogs down our way. We've got a hedgehog-friendly garden apparently, because we have little holes in the fence where they can wander in and out, and they like that. And we've got a little pond, and they like that as well. We quite often see hedgehogs in our garden. It's a shame that they're getting rare. Saber-toothed tigers are pretty scary. Yes, I don't think I fancy seeing that. Then there's Archaeopteryx. That's the sort of halfway house, isn't it, between dinosaurs and birds, or birds and dinosaurs, or they're kind of connected or something. The most underrated ancient creature is the terror bird. It's terrifying. It's the name. Yeah, I mean, actually, wasn't it? Doesn't it? Is it Tyrannosaurus? Isn't dinosaur? Doesn't that mean terrible lizard or something? Isn't that what the actual Latin is? They've just discovered a prehistoric huge crocodile fossil whose last meal was a dinosaur. So, I mean, most dinosaurs apparently weren't that big, were they? It's only the big ones that kind of attention-getting things. But some of the dinosaurs got some incredible sizes. They're just interesting creatures. It's just interesting. I mean, I think this is the fantastic thing about things like genetics and DNA and all that kind of stuff. Because I mean, here's us as human beings. Okay, now we're not big creatures, but we're not small creatures, are we? If you compare us to a mouse, then we're pretty significant, or a cat or something. As my cat, doesn't like to be picked up, but every time I pick it up, I kind of fold the cat and cradle it in my arms and then tickle its tum and basically go, well, there you go. You see, that's what you get for not having any opposable thumbs. And the cat looks at me with that kind of, you stupid human. I shall do something unspeakable in the kitchen later on when you don't know what I'm looking. So compared to some, I don't know where I was going with that. Compared to some, so I have a very strange relationship with my cat. It's probably a good point to stop that entire thing, actually. But oh dear. Yeah, you know, we're kind of quite big, but we're not like hugely big, are we? You know, if you compare us to like a T-Rex or a you know, an Apatosaurus, we're just a snack. Particularly if we're lawyers. So, you know, there's been lots of bigger creatures than us on the Earth, and there's lots of smaller stuff too. We're sort of very much in the middle of the sort of size spectrum. And I'm always just amazed by the fact that evolution can create such diverse forms from the same basic building blocks. Because at the end of the day, we're all made of very simple, ordinary chemicals. And our DNA is basically a list of 4 letters rearranged into lots of different sequences. It's just, that's just kind of quite mind-boggling to me that, you know, the same planet, and I know the environment has changed temperature a little bit, you know, plate tectonics, etc., right? But you know, the same planet that gives rise to a tardigrade can give rise to an Apatosaurus. I mean, who would predict that, right? That shows the amazing diversity of life on a single planet in this universe, let alone what's going to potentially be out there if we do ever find life on other worlds. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, isn't it? Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, it's terrible. Is it? Alan says perhaps that's what killed it. Read an interesting ancient alien trope novel recently, one of which where the fossils that a scientist found out turned out really had been one of the sapient beings. Ooh, okay, that's quite cool. Sean O'Connor says, hard to think that in the blood of my mother's budgie lay the genes of a T-Rex. Yeah, it's not quite the analogy you get, is it? Little birds. But they are related. This is the weird thing. I mean, I know we're kind of all related, aren't we, at a certain level, but dinosaurs grew from extreme small size to extreme big size and covered the niches in between with fewer species. Yeah, so Sothi, you're quite right. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, when the competition and the conditions are right for those things. Big Bird from Sesame Street scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. Actually, I think I'm with you on that one. I always find, I don't know about you guys, maybe this is something weird in psychology, is that I find puppets slightly disturbing, as if they're slightly sinister. I don't know if it's because my brain's going, actually they're not real, but they're acting like they are real. As a child, I never liked the Muppets or Sesame Street for that reason, and I don't like masks on people and things like that. Whether my brain is basically going, this is a deception and I don't like it. There's a sort of very fundamental part of me that doesn't like puppets, and I don't know why. I've got no rational explanation for it. So there we go. Johnny, did you take the woolly mammoth for a walk today? Did you pick up after? Imagine that. Imagine mammoth poop duty. Or imagine a Apatosaurus poop duty. That would be pretty bad. Jay Online here says, and this is a good point, I find it fascinating that only a tiny fraction of all the creatures that lived on Earth would have become fossilised. I mean, the vast majority of life on Earth has been lost forever and we'll never know. Yeah, so that's even worse, isn't it? You know, all the stuff we do know about is amazing, but that's like only like a few percent, and everything else is completely unknown. We have no idea what there was or anything. Haunted Love, I've heard of T-Rex, but I couldn't name any of their songs. Desolate Art says hello there, good evening, and good evening to you as well. Dear. I thought somebody was going to do the T-Rex joke. I knew. I had faith. I had faith. My dad had a few mean roosters, which made me think they were totally related to the velociraptors. Sean, yeah, clowns. I know, I can't stand. I mean, clowns are scary because of it, aren't they? But they were scary before that. I never liked clowns either. And interesting enough, I don't know, maybe this is family trauma coming out, because my sister reports has told me she can't stand humans acting as animals. You know, if you put an animal face mask like a wolf or a cat or something like that, my sister completely, that freaks her out entirely. She can't stand that. So I don't know, maybe there's some deep-seated fundamental family trauma in our past that we've kind of repressed. I don't know, maybe it'll come out. So there who knows, but there we go. It's possible, says Alan, that some dinosaurs could have had a basic technology of which nothing has survived. Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? I always like that idea. I mean, I think that's a great idea for a science fiction show or something. That dinosaurs or some other species in the past did have some kind of technology, but of course it's all been lost because it's so long ago. It's all been destroyed. There was a really good episode of Star Trek Voyager actually, where I think they encountered the descendants of Earth dinosaurs on the other side of the galaxy or something. That was actually quite a good episode. The idea being that the dinosaurs actually left the Earth. And then evolved independently, kind of onwards, and then discovered that their origins were actually from somewhere else, and then that was a heresy that had to be suppressed and stuff. It was quite a good episode actually. I quite enjoyed that. Even Basil Brush, actually, no, I quite like Basil Brush is probably an exception to all that. Yeah, yeah, I like Basil Brush. Lucky Luigi, what is amazing is how little variation there is in skeletal structures. One head, two arms, maybe a tail, which still generates such incredible diversity. Yeah, you see, that is interesting, isn't it? Because if you look at most creatures, they're all recognisably built on the same sort of frame, aren't they? You know, like you say, two arms, two legs. You don't get, I mean, at the insect level, there's lots of variety. But at the kind of mammal stroke reptile level, not so much at all, which is really interesting. That is quite interesting. Not even City and Sweep. No, I must admit, I didn't. I'm just not a big fan of puppets. Glenn says, I didn't like Bozo the Clown because as a kid I watched him turn into a chicken. He never turned him back. Oh dear, there's some poor chicken wandering around the world going, trying to explain. Oh dear. Farscape had lots of puppets. Yeah, it did actually, yeah. No, I must admit, as an adult, I quite like the Muppets, particularly some of their films, because they're actually quite cleverly written and they're quite good fun. But I don't know. So, yeah, it's just weird stuff. As a child, I didn't like it at all. Maybe Drew was a ventriloquist puppeteer in a previous life and suffered some calamity. Maybe I did. Yoda was a Muppet. Yes, that's true. In the original middle trequel quality 3-part bit in the middle of Star Wars. Like your sister won't like Wing Commander. No, yeah, those cats, the Kilrathi, would totally freak my sister out. She wouldn't like it. Finger bobs. Oh dear. Well, yeah, so when the asteroid hit, everything on the surface of the Earth was incinerated. So if there was a sentient bunch of dinos, all trace would be up. And we don't know what's been wiped out in the past, do we? Because, I mean, somebody speculated that if humanity disappeared tomorrow, like let's say there was a really bad strain of the coronavirus that killed us all off in a week or so, how long would our artifacts exist for? And what evidence would there be of human civilization after, 5 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, a million years? And I think they've worked out that it would be very, very hard to reconstruct anything of our technology beyond about 5 to 10,000 years. That's as long as the archaeological evidence would last. So, because it just gets disintegrated, because it's mostly metals and plastic. It gets worn down and broken down into its component parts at the kind of molecular level. So what you'd have is an awful lot of evidence of rusted metal and ground up plastic, but that would be about it. So I suppose you could infer from that if you found a thin layer of plastic residue in a rock, that some sort of high technology had existed somewhere in the past. Now, we've never found anything like that on the Earth to date, so there hasn't been a plastic generation like us before, as far as we can tell. But that would be about all there would be after a few million years of geological time, because nothing would survive. All our buildings would be disintegrated, all our technology would be disintegrated. The only thing that might exist, I suppose, is anything that was kind of up in space, that was in an orbit that was far enough away from the Earth that it couldn't get smashed. But even a million years is a long time for something to live up in space. So I don't know. Interesting one, that one. Sean O'Connor says, why change the design? We were talking about skeletons here. Why the change the design that works just like Land Rovers? Fair enough, yep. Alan says, if you put a fruit fly through a number of generations and various strange mutations occur, but whatever you do, it's still a fly. I suppose that's... Yeah, and you can do that, can't you, with... we used to do that at school with, what was it, Drosophila flies or something. They were weird. It makes you wonder if larger creatures which come into land would tend not to have more than 4 limbs because of environmental issues. Would even creatures from other planets follow common bodies? I don't know. I mean, we've ended up with 4 limbs, mostly because we're all descended from successful fish. That's how I understand it. So if you go back in time far enough, there's a species of fish that basically have some front flippers and back flippers and a wiggly bit in the middle, and they just seem to be better at surviving than anything else. So those are the ones that bred and were successful and basically outperformed everything else. And everything else that's evolved since has basically inherited that structure, so we can't get away from it, because there's no way we can now evolve an extra pair of limbs from somewhere. Although it does seem possible to lose them, because we obviously lost tails as human beings, haven't we, in a relatively short order of time. So I don't know. It depends. I don't know enough about genetics to know what can be done. But you always have to evolve from where you are. You can't kind of take a step back and go, actually, no, let's reset. That's not how it works. You have to evolve onwards from now. Sean reckons the only things that would survive would be plastic coffee cups and tax demands, or McDonald's. Maybe the dinosaurs used tech device from iridium. Yeah, maybe they were the iridium civilizations. Good point. According to WinterBeauGB, the evidence would be in shoe leather, according to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's right, the shoe event horizon. That was good. Dear. Oh, you're on good form tonight, my friend. Would be very interesting to know, says Zeonot here, if to know when the previous creature would have gotten the plastic from, considering we get it from the dead dinos. Yes, that's a good point. You need to have another series of creatures extinct in the previous epoch for you to go and mine their dead material to turn into something new. In some dry parts of the world, many artifacts are well preserved. In the UK, hardly anything had survived from the revenue. Yeah, so that's true actually. So sporadic bits and pieces will survive for long periods of time, won't they? I'm just thinking of more. I mean, I suppose a lot of those things are. I mean, there are certainly some ancient devices. I suppose there's the Antikythera Mechanism. That's relatively thing. So there may be a few bits and pieces of, somebody's GTX 3090 might survive fossilized in some rock. And they'll basically, oh look, they had excellent 3D graphics in the 21st century. I don't know. That's interesting to suppose. Form follows functions. Yes, I once saw an interesting film about archaeologists finding a human-sized dinosaur egg, and it hatches and turns out to be intelligent and starts killing them. Opposable Thumbs. I don't know that one. It'd be good to check it out though. Dru's hat pins will survive the. Well, oddly enough, small metal objects, things like coins and stuff, might survive. Trouble is, most of our stuff, I mean, anything plastic will get deformed too much by the pressures around it. It's not all that good at surviving, but metal will probably survive quite well. So maybe there'll be a collection of Volkswagens that get unearthed in thousands of years' time or something. Voyager 1 and 2 might survive. I think Voyager 1 and 2 and the New Horizons probe and things like that actually left the solar system are probably going to outlast the human race. Those are probably going to go on way longer than we actually ever exist. Unless they get turned into tourist beacons, as in things like Elite, where you can then go and visit and all basically go, oh look, yeah, it's our ancestors sent that out, and now there's a tourist beacon there, probably with a Costa coffee and a McDonald's. So I don't know. That'd be interesting to know. Mariner probes and one that flew past Pluto. Yeah, so that's the New Horizons one. So yeah, I think things like that. The 2 Pioneers. Actually, well, there were 11 Pioneers, weren't there? But I think Pioneers 10 and 11 were the ones that went out of the solar system, from what I recall. So that's great. So I mean, maybe some of our stuff would survive. That's right. So the Antikythera Mechanism is a corroded artifact that was recovered from the sea after thousands of years. It seems to have been a device for calculating planetary movement. So some of the stuff on the moon might survive better. I mean, it will slowly get damaged by micrometeorites, but it probably lasts a lot longer than anything on the Earth because there's no atmosphere to corrode it. The Voyager probes had the right idea and left. Dear, it's all good. It's all good. Right, well, that's enough of that waffling, my friends. Come on, let's stop talking about dinosaurs. As fascinating as dinosaurs are, I do like dinosaurs. I don't know whether it's just the big teeth or the fact that they're just enormous. That's what's so appealing. Kids love dinosaurs. I noticed that with my kids when they were young. Or in the space Tesla, wasn't it? The Roadster that's in orbit somewhere between here and Mars. I really hope the Apollo landing spots will be preserved as they are when we return to protect them as historical. That would be good because they are historical sites. It's interesting actually that this is another aside actually, an aside to an aside, much ado about some ado, is. I don't know, and I'd be interested to know if this is the same in the rest of the UK and or in the rest of the world, because my kids are actually reasonably good at learning stuff, and they take an interest in history and stuff, and they probably know a lot more about some things than I do. But the history they're taught at school stops abruptly in about 1945, and I was basically saying, so what do you consider to be the biggest, most significant events of the 20th century? And the classic, World War One, World War Two, fair enough, fairly big, significant event. But then they'll go on to, then there was the Cold War. I say, I remember that. I was there, and various other bits and pieces. And they rattle off a few bits and pieces, but the moon landings never ever come up, never. And I've talked to quite a few sort of my kids' friends, and they know nothing about it. It's just not taught. And I think, surely by now that's a fairly major, significant event in the 20th century that we landed on the moon. We've never gone back, and whilst I do tease my American viewers from time to time, in a nice way, let's be fair, okay? The Americans put a man on the moon. It wasn't, and I consider that pretty damn significant achievement, to be honest. It's quite impressive. I mean, let's be fair. It is quite impressive, and God bless America for that one. But in this country, and I don't know if this is true in the rest of the world, it just isn't taught. We don't. It's like there's an entire generation of people who really don't know. We went to the moon, really, and it's just like they're kind of like, did we? Yeah, back in the 60s, which is history now as far as most people are concerned. But it's just not taught, and it's like Christopher Columbus discovered America, and the Romans, and Henry VIII, and Neil Armstrong, nope, haven't heard of him. Hitler, heard of him, yeah. Winston Churchill, heard of him. Neil Armstrong, nope, nothing. So I don't know. Is that the same in other countries? I mean, what about America? I mean, is the moon landing heralded as a great achievement of America in America? I don't know. I mean, I know there's all the conspiracy theories and all that kind of complete nonsense about the fact we never went to the moon. It was all filmed on a soundstage and all that kind of cobblers. But that's a different level of stupidity. I don't know. It's just weird. So in the US, the moon landings were taught in history, at least when I was in school. Okay, that's interesting. Chris Viking says we went further. Neil who, yeah. I mean, we talked about the Cuban Missile Crisis for one, the Chinese Cultural Revolution. I think we also did the Iran-Iraq War and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Jian Han here, that's a very good point. I don't recall learning about the moon landing at school. That was stuff I would have learned checking out space books in the school library, yep. I thought it was hard not to avoid knowing about Apollo if you were alive at the time. Okay, so here, Desert Start says, here in Croatia, we barely touched American history, just general Colombo stuff, yeah. I think because of NASA and because American landings is taught in school. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it makes more sense that it would be kind of highlighted in the US, but I mean, we landed on the moon. I mean, come on. And I think you're right, Alan. Arguably, I mean, moon landings were the most amazing human achievement of the 20th century. I mean, forget the political motivations for why it was done, and I get that was. We didn't go there really for the glory of human spirit, kind of. The Americans went there to beat the Russians, but the political thing aside, it was still a fantastic achievement. Wintermute says, are they taught about the Wright brothers, Louis Bolero, Aycock and Brown? Probably not for the same reason as the space race isn't taught. Yeah, well, I suppose that's a good point. I mean, if I asked my kids about the Wright brothers, I think they would know. Louis Bolero and Aycock and Brown, probably not. I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? It seems a strange thing. And the question is, says Man Monks up, when does history as a subject start? Well. Now that my kids are being taught about the Cold War in history lessons, and that was in the 80s, I think it's maybe just over a generation back. Because I have, the funny thing is, of course, when I was born, 1970, it was a scare of the only 25 years after the end of the Second World War, which does sound a bit weird. So, I don't know. So yeah, weird. I don't know. It's just an odd thing. So Mitchell and Webb had a sketch about faking the moon landing, where the conclusion was to make it convincing they need to go to the moon and fake it there. Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to fake, basically, that sort of stuff. I once knew a person who didn't believe space was real and the planets were fake, etc. When I said I'd seen them with my own 2 eyes through a telescope, she just shrugged, and I was told by the group leaders to just drop it and let her think it. You can't help people like that, can you? Science history is rarely taught, says Sean. It makes the populace think. Ah, yes. Well, they can't have that. The governments don't like that. Think not thing. Yeah, that is a problem. That is definitely a problem. So, but I remember just, reading about Newton and Einstein in history, but nothing. I don't know. It's weird. It's very selective history that's taught. Maybe it's a country-specific thing as well. You tend to cherry-pick the bits that consider important. We didn't. Everybody in the UK seems to learn an awful lot about Henry VIII, mostly because of what happened to his poor 6 wives, really. But that seems to be a big deal in the UK. We also do blowing up of the Houses of Parliament, which I'm surprised is so popular. We celebrate. We have a holiday over here, for those of you who don't know, in other countries, called Guy Fawkes Night, which is actually November the 5th. Hence the phrase "Remember the 5th of November," where we fire lots and lots of fireworks in celebration that one guy tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament, which is obviously the governing building of the UK, but failed. I don't know why either. There's so much history that it's hard to do it all. It's very true. It's very, very true. Flat earthers all over the globe. That's right. The only thing to fear is sphere itself. Guy Fawkes Night, really bizarre to us Americans. Yes, I don't know. There's lots of very, very strange things. But anyway, there we go. Right, it is 33 minutes past the hour, and we haven't got to the topic. Now, the topic tonight, this is a bit more of a science fiction one tonight for you, for your delectation and delight. And the topic tonight is, and I was watching, and there's an episode of Star Trek, as quite often is, that prompts me to go, we need to discuss this because this is important. Communication in science fiction, okay? Communication, and more specifically, a device which I'm going to now take great liberties with and great enjoyment about ripping to shreds in terms of its plausibility, is the Universal Translator. Okay, so this is a magic device that exists in most science fiction TV shows. Okay, so here's the problem. Okay, you rock up in your starship on an alien world. Okay. So fast to the topic, only half an hour, yeah. We'll get to the Babel Fish. We will get to the Babel Fish. You rock up in your spaceship, okay? You've discovered an alien sentient species on the planet below, and you beam down, or you fly down, depending on which sci-fi thing you're in. And, the aliens are able to speak. And you switch on the Universal Translator. And hey presto, the aliens suddenly speak English. It's like, okay, what? How does this work? What is this magic? Glenn, yeah. So the topic is the Universal Translator, or communication in science fiction. Now I know why these things are being created. Okay, they are because they're shortcuts for TV series. Okay, because if every time the Enterprise, or whatever the starship is, encountered an alien race, okay, and you had to spend like 80% of the episode trying to figure out what the hell the aliens were saying, it wouldn't be a great episode, would it? But basically, the way the Universal Translator works is nothing short of magic, basically, because without any without any kind of vocabulary, or pre-information, it can listen to a handful of words from the aliens and then immediately render what they're saying into plain English, and obviously vice versa as well. So it's like, how does that work? And it's a common thing in lots of science fiction. It's like, there's either the assumption that everybody in the universe speaks one language. So lots of science fiction just basically assumes that all other languages have died. Okay, and for the sake of argument, it's going to be English that survives because Western world, right? And yeah, it even works in time travel episodes, doesn't it, Kelly Bagler? That's quite right. So you go back in time, and everyone speaks English there as well. Whereas actually, if you went back in time beyond about, I don't know, maybe 300 years, you'd find it really difficult to understand what the hell anybody was saying, because the English has changed over that time. You go back far enough, everyone would be speaking Latin or Middle English or Middle French or Occitan or something like that. You wouldn't have to go back that far in time before everything became completely unintelligible to you. So that's there's another thing, and there is the assumption, as Alan's basically said, why would alien creatures necessarily communicate using sound? Because that's just something that's fairly unique to Earth. Okay, so I think that's quite good. In Planet of the Apes, everyone speaks English, but Charlton Heston still doesn't realise he's on Earth. He should have thought about that, shouldn't he? The Guardians of the Guardians of the Galaxy video game is a good explanation of it. Their universal translators aren't universal at all. In fact, modules for rare languages like Groot are absurdly overpriced. Okay, so I quite like that. The fact that you might be able to say, okay, well, I can't go and speak to those aliens without the correct upgrade to my translator module. So you have to buy the language in advance. But that doesn't help you in a first contact situation, does it? Because you haven't got that information to hand. Sophie St. Gainwell says, let's face the fact the common communication protocol is a merging pattern because it's desirable for all. And I think we're seeing that, aren't we? The fact that we've now got the internet as a mechanism for interchange of information much more dynamically than perhaps we did a few decades ago is changing the way language works. But I don't understand what my kids are saying half the time, and they're supposed to be speaking English. And each generation invents its own kind of lingo, doesn't it, and all that kind of stuff. And that's a good point, actually. Commander John says Stargate started with interesting language barriers and then gave up. The problem is you have to give up at a TV series because somebody's standing there going, "Me, Daniel-san, you, spaceship thingy, aliens, death." Bang, bang, shoot, shoot. Yeah, it gets really boring quite quickly, okay? that can be quite problematic. So I can understand why in films and TV series it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. You have to kind of hand wavium some kind of universal translator into existing. Marvin Oxon says, greetings, hello. So Sean says, even the Chinese translation of wouldn't... assembly instructions is yes, it is. What chance do we have with the erasers? I once got a battery, actually. I bought one of those rechargeable battery tank things that you use for recharging your phone a couple of times on airplanes and that kind of stuff. And on the back, the number one instruction was, 1, get rid of all children. So I showed this to my kids and said, sorry guys, that's it, you got to go. I can't use this battery if you guys are around. So I assume the meaning of the instruction was keep away from children, which is good advice anyway, actually. Just take these things literally, but basically it was remove all children. So I don't know if that was just my children or all the children in the entire world. Maybe that's what we're supposed to do. Maybe that's the solution to all energy problems. That's what the Chinese are actually trying to tell us, is if we remove all children from the planet, then these batteries will work extremely efficiently. I don't know. Very difficult to tell. So there we go. Romulan language DLC. 13,000 space dollars, please. What about the movie Arrival, says DO977. Now, that is a very good one, actually. Now, that is one where the aliens turn up and they are incomprehensible. We have to communicate, we have to work things out. But that is actually the entire point of the movie, as I recall. I quite enjoyed that one. It was a little bit more thinky, wasn't it? It was a bit more cerebral. You had to kind of put your head into that movie and try and understand. That I did like. So that's actually almost the antithesis of this discussion, isn't it? The fact that you could actually make a movie out of that particular problem. Keep away from children whenever possible, says Kenny Bagler. So Arrival was awesome. Yeah, so I did enjoy Arrival. That's a very, very good point. And some ancient documents have defined generations of linguists. And they did think that hieroglyphics, for a long, long time, they thought hieroglyphics were going to be indecipherable until they managed to find things and kind of break those codes, and it turned out not to be quite as complicated as they thought. But some stuff is if you've got no basis for trying to work it out, it's very, very difficult to figure out actually what it is. And Lucky Luigi's touching kind of on the next point. The thing is, a perfect translation of a language is normally not possible because concepts, emotions and feelings might not exist in the other language or overlap and be different. And even close languages like Dutch and German cannot be mapped 100% because you think in a different language. And that's a very good point. And lots of languages are constructed in different ways as well. And you've got the examples of, if I said in English, the horse is standing in front of the barn, okay, then if you had to translate that into Japanese, it would be something like barn in front at horse at standing horse, okay. So until I'd said the word barn in English, the Universal Translator wouldn't have all the information it needed to turn it into Japanese and then go, yes, barn in front at standing horse. So languages are constructed in different orders. Even French and English wouldn't translate too well because you put the verbs and things and the nouns the other way round to what you expect. So all that sort of stuff is stuff that the Universal Translator sort of waves away and goes, no. It just works really, really well. So all sorts of things like that. That's right, the Rosetta Stone and such like. Sean says, I like children, but just no one knows how to cook them properly. Without the barrier of language, my short story for the sci-fi anthology would be much... Yeah, you see, you can make use of it. And I think smart science fiction kind of... It's worth addressing that. I must admit, this is something I haven't really thought of in my novels as to what I'm going to do with language. At the moment, everyone sort of speaks a generic spacer tongue or something like that, don't they? Quite often, that's fairly common. There's this possible assumption in some sci-fi universes that there is everything's become kind of homogenized because space travel and things. But it's interesting to observe that Star Trek goes with a technological solution here, so there's a Universal Translator going on, and it's not quite clear how that works because somehow, where is the Universal Translator, for example? Because you put a human, okay, and a Klingon in a room, okay, and the humans don't speak Klingon and the Klingons don't speak human. So how do they? Where is the translator? Is it a box on the desk? Is it a microphone in your ear? Does the Klingon have one as well, or is there some device in the room that's doing the translation? Is it? Well, how does it work? Questions that you answer. And then if you add in a Romulan into the room, okay, so how does it work kind of three-way? I mean, if I speak in English, how does the Romulan hear something in Romulan and the Klingon hear something in Klingon? Is it implants? I don't know. I don't know how Star Trek does this. It's just switch the Universal Translator on. Where is the Universal Translator? Is it in your head? What is it? So it's all that sort of stuff. In Star Trek 3, I find the subtitled Klingon parts more effective dramatically than the parts spoken in English. Yeah, because sometimes the Klingons like to emphasise things for dramatic effect, don't they? Puck, tuck, muck, puck, tuck, muck, and all that sort of stuff. That's not very good Klingon. I have no idea what I just said. But maybe the subtitles will appear on Google later on. It says, small duck and pheasant has been provided. No idea. But yeah, sometimes the Universal Translator knows when not to translate for dramatic emphasis, doesn't it? So Klingons will occasionally say something in Klingon, and the Universal Translator goes, yeah, that's just for dramatic emphasis. I'm not going to bother translating that. I don't know what's going on. So there's things like that. That's interesting. J09 there, in my novel I use the idea of using a technical man to give context clues as a basis for starting translation. Yeah, you can see, imagine that it would take a long time. If you come across an alien race, you basically go, how do we communicate? What are our common concepts? Maybe we'd start with mathematics and stuff, and then common nouns, if they have a concept of nouns for recognisable objects, and build up from there. But it would take time, whereas the Universal Translator just seems to do it. Glenn says German and English have very different orders for elements. Exactly, that's a problem. The split infinitive appeared after the Norman conquest, when England was borrowing widely from French, and other Germanic languages such as German still do not permit an adverb to fall between an infinitive and its particle. Preposition. Wow, that's very, very, very detailed explanation there, Mad Monk. So thank you very much. I've got tremors of being back at school. Thanks for that. That's right. Chris Viking, when I translate something, I will sometimes need to avoid being 100% accurate in order to convey the intended meaning in a better way. Now that's an interesting thing, because then you're inserting your own interpretation of what the reader or the writer or the author, shall I say, or the speaker intended to say. So that's quite a responsibility, isn't it? Commander Face Guy says, I cringed so hard in the first few episodes of Enterprise where they figured out the language with like 3 words. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Okay, if your technology isn't quite advanced enough to have a universal translator, what you always have on the ship is a crew member, and it's usually a woman for some reason. I don't know. It's just a general observation. That is insanely gifted at languages. You can just listen to a few words of an alien language and go, I think I've got a rudimentary understanding of their syntax now. Like, how did you manage that with 3 words? Yeah, this makes no sense at all. So that's a problem. Just use a Babel fish in your ear, says Marvin. So yes, we'll talk about the Babel fish, because I actually think the Babel fish, believe it or not, is a more rational explanation for how a universal translator might actually work. Implants, says Shaw, implants. So yeah, implants. Let's talk about implants. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then there's also local dialects, even if language is the same. I mean, actually, that's a very good point, Glenn. I mean, if you live in the UK, you can drive about 3 hours in any direction from wherever you live, and nobody in the country will speak. You won't be able to understand anybody. I mean, me and Sean, for example, can only communicate in text. If we actually met in person, we wouldn't be able to understand anything we say. Which is not quite true, but certainly the regional differences in the UK are very quite dramatic. I mean, if you go to Cornwall, or you go to Wales, or you go to Manchester, Liverpool, you go to York, you go to Scotland, you go to the Highlands up near the top, all those sort of things. The accents are very, very strong, very, very strong indeed, and can be quite hard. But you tune into them after a while. But to start with, it's kind of like, what? Hold on, I was born in England. I've only been here 17 years. Well, I was born in Canada, so it doesn't really help, does it? Regional, and in France it's also difficult and stuff. And the Philippines has 7,500 islands, 111 dialects. Youch. Okay, so that's quite good. That's a very rude statement, says Mad Monks. I'm sorry. Drew gets banned from Twitch for cursing in Klingon. Okay, so Wintermute says there are explanations for the Universal Translator in the TNG technical manual. Excellent. Ferengi have the translators in their ears. Okay. Translation from Klingon: your mother was hamster and your father smelt of elderberries. Okay, so Haunted Love says, in Doctor Who, the TARDIS's Universal Translator is explicitly based on telepathy, which can also translate writing. Okay, so Doctor Who's a little bit kind of that's quite close to magic, isn't it, Doctor Who? But that's quite good. At least they've thought about it. So telepathy is a thing. Okay, so basically, rather than you actually translating, you're kind of communicating mind to mind, and the words basically just form themselves. Or Google's Universal Translator. See, translating languages is actually really tough, isn't it? Like, for reasons that we've already mentioned. I mean, I've got a friend who's actually a professional translator who I went to school with, and he's still doing it now. And I remember thinking at school, well, computers will be able to do that, in a few years. And of course they can't. I mean, Google doesn't do a bad job, really. But it's by no means good enough to pass as a native speaker, is it? You just can't do it. So, so it's very, it's a hard problem. It's a hard problem even when you know both of the languages, let alone if you don't know one of them. So there we go. Crab Thars hammer. So there's all sorts of things. You can already buy loudspeakers which only send audio in a very small area, so that's good. Yes. So maybe you have and like you say, we've already mentioned implants. Okay, so technological solution to this. So what you do is you have a small computerized device that you either wear in your ear or medically insert in your ear canal or something, which listens to the conversation. And then translates it for you. That kind of is, on the verge of feasibility, isn't it, from our perspective? The problem with that is that if someone was speaking to you in a foreign language, what you'd have to do, the computer would have to basically record the entire session. So if I'm saying, I don't know, something in a foreign language, the computer has to get hold of that translation, figure out what it is, and then translate and then repeat it to you. So all your conversations would be sort of, hello, my name's Drew. Ah, yes, hello, my name is Glenn. Ah, Glenn, how's your starship today? My starship is excellent, thank you very much, Drew. It would be like that, wouldn't it? Which doesn't happen, because it's really, really awkward. So I'm not convinced that's how it can work. So I don't know. Alan says, I once had to act as an interpreter between someone from County Durham and someone from Manchester. Yes, I can completely understand that. Some languages, however, are universal. We would be able to understand aliens' math. Yeah, so math is right, but it's very, very hard to have a conversation in maths, isn't it? I mean, if you're trying to explain how long something is or what angle something's at or how far away something is, then maybe that makes sense. But if you want to cook a souffle for an alien, then maths is not going to be quite so useful. So I don't know. It's difficult. Lots of people around the world actually hear different accents for the Belter Creole. Okay, that's from The Expanse. It's very interesting. James S.A. Corey has addressed it before on Twitter. Interesting. Because I suppose you recognise different things and you associate with different things. That is quite interesting. Shadow Wyvern, there's a scene in Star Trek 6 that they can't use the Universal Translator, so they resort to looking up what the Klingons are saying in books. Oh, that's right, I remember that. Remember that episode? How come they had all the books on the ship? With who are trying to speak the correct Klingon response over the comms. That's right, I do remember that. That's quite interesting. Chris says, here in Sweden you don't need to drive that far. I mean, we can drive 30 minutes and there's a distinct accent. It's within our municipality these days, but it was a bit isolated back in the day. Wow, okay. Sean says, it took me a year to get a group of Orcadian. Shetland's still confusing. I haven't been to Shetland. I must try that one day. Okay, Alan says, I met some people from near Oslo and near Stockholm who could talk together very easily, but they both said they couldn't understand people from Trondheim. Excellent. Mad Monks of, couldn't a quantum computer work it out before the conversations? I don't know. I mean, quantum computers are kind of being sold as a bit of a panacea for every conceivable problem that we've got. I don't know if they can, solve things before they've even. I don't know. Maybe they can. I mean, I don't know anything about quantum computing, so maybe you guys tell me. But that seems a bit weird. In Doctor Who: The Christmas Invasion, the characters hear the aliens in their own language until the Doctor wakes up and completes a telepathic circuit with the TARDIS, after which they start hearing the aliens in English. It's quite a clever solution. So I suppose the whole telepathic circuit with the TARDIS sort of kind of does work, but it's a bit, for me, that's kind of a slightly unsatisfying a way of doing it. I don't know. The technological solution appeals to me more, but it has all sorts of deficiencies in the way it's done. Okay, so I think in Weir's novel Hail Mary, they do use math in the period to start the alien humans start to communicate. Yeah, and also in the movie Contact, isn't it? So they're sent, they receive instructions from the aliens in the Contact movie, the Carl Sagan one, whereby, but it's all maths, isn't it? It's all maths, and it's basically explaining hydrogen and things in terms of other things. So this is how wars start, yeah. So it's interesting, that sort of stuff. If that's how quantum computers work, I'd like some quantum in my oven so I can cook me some dinner before I get hungry. I'll have some of that there, quantum, please. Yeah, that'd be quite good. This universal translator technology has to be kind of incorporated. Now, it's interesting to see how some other franchises do it. So Star Wars, for example, does have translators in it. And what they tend to do in Star Wars, I was noticing this with the book of Boba Fett, is that if the creature is, and it's usually a creature, is talking, then you kind of hear its kind of normal alien-y speak in the background with a sort of and then there's a little device stuck on the side of its face which has a little speaker in it, like a kind of Amazon Alexa thing that's basically translating in real time what it's actually saying. So that kind of, so basically you decide that, actually it's going to be English in the future. The devices translate in one direction only. So they're able to translate into a specific direction. So maybe that's the case if somebody has to sit there and work it out. But Star Wars doesn't normally cater for the first contact scenarios in the same way that Star Trek does. So Mad Monk just throws the word quantum into every conversation. My favourite thing has always been that the viewer can't understand R2-D2 better than the character does. But R2-D2 always makes the same sounds, doesn't he? He's got that sort of which I don't know what that means. Then there's the sound, which is obviously, it's fairly clear what that means. And then there's a sound, which is kind of like, I've always interpreted as, I don't know, what are we going to do? So there we are. Does Alexia translate Klingon? Don't know, that would be quite good. Pretty soon Alexa will know how to translate any language. Well, that would be quite good to see if she can manage that. So I don't know, but there we go. Now we must talk about Douglas Adams at this stage, because he's come up with, and I think, the best solution. Okay, and I'm gonna have to read this out. Okay, let me see if I can find it, because the explanation is so good. Let's see if I can find it. The Babel Fish. Okay, so there we go. I've just found it on here. So this is how the Babel Fish is described. Most of you will know this, okay? That's right. The Babel Fish is small, yellow, leech-like, and probably the oddest thing in the universe. It feeds on brainwave energy received not from its own carrier, but from those around it. It absorbs all unconscious mental frequencies from this brainwave energy to nourish itself with, and then it excretes into the mind of its carrier a telepathic matrix formed by combining the conscious thought frequencies with nerve signals picked up from the speech centers of the brain which has supplied them. The practical upshot of all this is, if you stick a Babel Fish in your ear, you can instantly understand anything said to you in any form of language. The speech pattern you actually hear decodes the brainwave matrix which has been fed into your mind by the Babel Fish. That's just brilliant, I think, because basically it's a solution. It's a genetic. It's a creature solution, whereby it's absorbing unconscious mental frequencies from brainwave energy and then excreting into your head the actual interpretation. So I think that's actually quite an elegant solution to that particular problem, because it's getting around the language. Okay, it's getting around speech. You hear it. It's effectively an implant, but it's a biological one. So what it's doing is it's excreting into your brain the actual translation without having to be converted into speech first. So you hear it in your language, whatever that happens to be, because your brain figures out what the meaning actually is from what's being said. And then assuming the other creature in the universe has got a Babel fish as well, then they hear it in their native language, so you can therefore communicate with each other. So that was brilliant. That's what I call toilet humour. Yeah, it was. So DJ Douglas Adams was a genius. He has to be said. An outstandingly brilliant writer. He's one of my favourite writers. I mean, he came up with what I consider to be the best line in all of English literature ever. Which was, the Vogon's spaceships hang in the sky exactly the same way that bricks don't. I just think it's just perfection. They cannot be beaten. That was brilliant. Mad Mark, and God, yeah. Okay, so this goes on, the business about God. Okay, so for those of you who haven't heard this, I should read this bit out as well, because this is quite funny. Now, it is such a bizarrely improbable coincidence that something so mind-bogglingly useful could have evolved purely by chance, that some thinkers have chosen to see it as a final clinching proof of the non-existence of God. Okay, the argument goes something like this. I refuse to prove that I exist, says God. For proof denies faith, and without faith, I am nothing. Ah, but, says man, the Babel Fish is a dead giveaway, isn't it? It could not have evolved by chance, so it proves you exist. Therefore, by your own arguments, you don't. QED. Oh dear, says God. I hadn't thought of that. Vanishes in the above logic. Ah, well, that was easy, says man. And for an encore, goes on to prove that black is white and gets himself killed on the next zebra crossing. Kelly Bagdell says Drew quotes the line about Vogon chips at least once every 3 streams. Yeah, I know. It's just brilliant. I mean, I wish I could write like that. So Marvin Duck said the poor Babel Fish, by effectively removing all barriers to communication between different races and cultures, has caused more and bloodier wars than anything else in the history of creation. So yeah, maybe communication isn't such a good thing. So I like what Douglas Adams. He clearly sat down and thought about, okay, hang on, this whole how do you communicate with aliens thing? There's got to be an easy way to do it. He didn't choose the easy way out and just hand wavy him in a Universal Translator. He actually thought of a clever way and then just riffed on it, which I think is just absolutely brilliant. It's the same thing he's done with space travel, actually. So he's basically gone. Okay, hang on a minute. So he's probably seen Star Trek, and he's probably seen Star Wars. He's seen warp drives and hyperspace drives, and then he invents the infinite improbability drive instead to replace it. So we haven't got all that tedious mucking about in hyperspace. Which is just a lovely, lovely line. The infinite improbability drive works on the principle of, you need a nice hot cup of tea, which is very, very British. So I think he's some sort of space drive that needs a nice hot cup of tea in the first place, which is quite funny. And then basically when it's in full infinite improbability mode, it passes through every conceivable point in every conceivable universe. And all you need to do to figure out your destination is to work out exactly how improbable it is that you'll end up at that particular point in space, and type that number into the infinite improbability drive, and boom, there you're there. Just insanely good space drive. Dear. Anyway, so there we go. Classic humour. Drew must be at least half Vogon. I shall read some Vogon poetry at you if you're not careful. Frettled grunt butley, etc. Yeah, so there's lots. If you haven't read Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you may need to be British to appreciate some of the humour, but it is extremely funny. I absolutely love it. Yes, a strong Brownian motion generator, like a nice hot cup of tea. Yeah. And yeah, but oddly enough, that's right. The Heart of Gold computer can't make a good cup of tea. In fact, that's how the second book starts, isn't it? As it struggles to try and make a decent cup of tea. And then you get the Bistromath drive, isn't it? Yes, I think that so the Bistromath drive replaces the infinite improbability drive, and it's based on the fact that most maths obeys particular rules, but maths on restaurant bill paper obeys different rules. So they use this power of new maths that only works on restaurant calculations to invent an entirely new drive unit again somehow. I don't know. It's just bizarre. So there's all sorts of stuff. Flying is basically chucking yourself at the ground and missing. All sorts of stuff. So I think I rather like the Babel Fish as an explanation for the infinite. The ability to communicate. It kind of almost seemed a slightly better solution. Now, somebody has mentioned Farscape. Now, Farscape did have little translator microbes, I think they were. Is that right? I haven't seen Farscape for a long, long time, but I think they were translator microbes. So they kind of work on the sort of receiving principle. So the translator microbes can only help you understand somebody else. They don't change what you're saying. Yeah, so you would speak in English, and somebody with the translator microbes would hear your English, and it would be translated into your native language for you to comprehend. Therefore, you've kind of got things. So interesting enough, the Universal Translator actually only needs to work in one direction. It only needs to know the other language, and then in that case, in Farscape. So that kind of works. So I don't know how the microbes learn the language in the first place, whether that was covered in the story. So maybe somebody knows more about Farscape. Farscape I haven't watched for a long, long time, so I need to go back on that. So there's another solution. Okay, so translator microbes. So we've got telepathy from Doctor Who. We've got technology from Star Wars and Star Trek, which is kind of more translatory sort of stuff. Farscape is using kind of microbes. The Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy is using a fish in your ear, obviously. I'm just wondering what else there is. Like you say, in Stargate, they tried to do it manually, didn't they? Which is quite good. A physician would have to be microbes forming a neural net of some kind. Single cell can't do anything close. No, so you'd have to have some. Well, I don't know how it's. I mean, it's quite a simple thing just to say. Oh yes, it's just microbes. How does that work then? It's the same with nanites and nanobots, isn't it? Translator microbes had to be present in both parties for them to work. Oh, did they? Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So those sort of things. I just think it's an interesting one. So I mean, I think if you're you can use the strangeness of an alien race. I think the fact that you can't communicate with an alien it makes them a lot more mysterious. So let's go back to the Arrival one for a moment. The fact that the alien doesn't speak any English doesn't make things easier. It just chucks up a bunch of symbols, and we have to go, what the hell does that mean? Then I think that's actually makes them much more otherworldly, because on the Earth, even if two humans meet who don't speak the same language, there's lots of other cues that we can use. Okay, so generally, most human expressions translate pretty well. So if I'm laughing, if I'm smiling, okay, like that, yeah, generally you're going to get the impression, even if you don't speak my language, that I'm reasonably well disposed towards you. Okay, if I'm kind of frowning and threatening, and kind of like that, kind of wrinkled nose, wrinkled brow, lowered eyeline, etc., and closed mouth. That downward curl of your mouth, gives you the impression that you're not happy. Okay, now those facial expressions are very human. Okay, we do share some of them with some of the other creatures as well, and a lot of our communication is non-verbal, right? Okay, so we do have a lot of verbal communication clearly for the higher level concepts. But if I say to you, I'm extremely happy about that, guys. That's brilliant, yay! Or if I say, I'm extremely happy about that, guys. That's brilliant. Say words. Context is completely different. Okay, one I'm being very sarcastic and clearly showing some disapproval. The other one I'm probably genuinely actually meaning it. Now, so a lot of our communication is non-verbal, and as humans, generally we can appreciate that. Now, there are some differences. Some hand signals don't translate in different cultures, and things like that. There are differences, but we can if you don't have a common language, you can normally figure something out. Like I need a drink. It's fairly common, or I'm hungry. I need some food. Or my name is me Dru. Yeah, we do a lot of this with the eyebrows. All that sort of stuff. Which is an opening and welcoming gesture. Whereas if I sit with my hands crossed like this, that's clearly a kind of don't come near me. I'm not interested. Whereas I've got my hands kind of open and outwards. That means I'm a bit more welcoming. Those things do translate without words. That's right. So sensory actual communication is universal. Yeah. So it made me think of a carrier up the Khyber where they nod their heads to say no. Yeah. So oh no, the other human is grinning. He's baring his teeth at me. He's a cannibal. War. If you talk to a dog in an upbeat manner, yeah. So dogs can pick up. Interesting enough, dogs pick up a lot more from your tone than they do from your words. So if you say to a dog, oh yeah, good dog. Yeah, do you want some food? Yeah, let's have some food. Yeah, are you excited to go for a walk? All that sort of stuff. Whereas if you say to a dog, are you excited to go for a walk? Would you like some food? The dog just, it gets its sense of understanding more from your animation and your tone than it does from any actual words. Now, dogs can learn words, but there's a lot more into it. And if you say aggressive things to your dog in a non-aggressive way, like you stupid hound, you stupid, utterly pointless doggus. I say this to my dog a lot. What are you doing? You're completely and utterly useless, just hanging around there in your box, sleeping in there. Yeah, my dog thinks it's entirely perfectly okay for me to speak like that. Whereas if I was actually angrily cross at the dog, then it would know that I was angrily cross, and the tail would go between its legs, and it would be all uncomfortable. So dogs will pick up things, and it's not the words necessarily that's doing that talking for you. American hitchhikers in Australia offend in Star Wars. And dogs co-evolve with human language, yeah. Walkies says sure. So there's lots of things like that. Now with other creatures that are less, have less in common with it. I mean, for example, cats. I mean, cat may understand what you say, but it doesn't care. So there's no point trying to talk to a cat. And other intelligent creatures like some of the birds and things like dolphins and stuff can pick up things from you, and then they can express things back to you as well. Monkeys and so on and so forth. Now, when you start talking about aliens, okay, dogs can understand about 250 words allegedly. Wow, that's pretty good. Cats just don't give a damn. But when you talk about an alien, okay, so you've got no frame of reference with an alien creature. We have arms, okay, and we have legs. We've got that in common with dogs and cats. They've got paws, but you know what I mean. Even a sea lion will wave its flipper when we wave our arms. We have context. We have commonality of appendages, as it were. Now, an alien is not guaranteed to have anything like that. Okay, so when we raise our eyebrows and go, ah, like that, most humans will interpret that as, oh, he's being funny, he's being friendly. Whereas an alien might go, that's the most insulting thing I've ever seen. Look, he raised his eyebrows at me. What the hell does that mean? And in fact, they might not even have analogous features for us to work off. So we're quite used to on Earth creatures having, two eyes, a nose, a mouth, and two ears. Now that's a fairly normal arrangement for creatures on the Earth. We recognise that in all sorts of creatures, don't we? Even if you go back and look at something like a dinosaur, okay, so a T-Rex has a big mouth, lots of teeth, but it does have eyes, and it has kind of a snout as opposed to nose. I don't know if they have ears, but they have something like that. It's a recognisably proportioned kind of creature that we can kind of interpret a little bit. And when it goes rah, we're not going to die horribly, particularly if we're lawyers. But we understand those things. Whereas an alien isn't going to have any of those cues at all. So how are we going to interpret the non-verbal communication? It's just going to be really, really difficult, because none of our expressions. I mean, I quite like the idea. They've kind of touched on it with Star Trek with things like, the Vulcan salute, but of course all the aliens in Star Trek are humanoids with bits of stuff stuck to their face, because of because of special effects limitations. Star Wars is a bit better than Star Trek actually in that regard. Their aliens always look quite a lot more convincing to me. But in reality, if you look at the variety of creatures we have on the Earth, and then go completely mad with all the creatures that could potentially exist in space, we're not going to have any common ground when it comes to non-verbal communication at all. And that's before we get into the whole conversation about, will they use sound? Okay, because we use sound because it works. Okay, and it works quite well in this atmosphere. Now, other creatures may not use sound. They may not have ever evolved to use sound. All that sort of stuff. So there's all sorts of problems there. Anyway, right, I've got to catch up with the chat because I've been wobbling. So anyway, so dogs can understand about 250 words, which is more than some humans actually. Cats understand us and hate us. Yeah, cats don't give a damn. Yeah, cat communicate with head movements and intricate micro eye movements. Okay, well that's interesting. So yes, because my cat, it does communicate. To be fair, my cat, it's fairly clear what it wants. Most of the time. Thinking of the monkeys that have been taught to understand and communicate are fascinating. So there's some of them, the monkeys are able to understand some pretty advanced concepts, right? So dolphins, of course. What about the mice? Going back to Douglas Adams. Cats probably know more words, but just won't let on. I think you're probably right. No alien race would have to have arms and hands of some sort. So, this one is interesting, isn't it? Because they probably wouldn't share our structure, i.e., 2 arms, 2 legs necessarily. And but there are quite a lot of evolutionary advantages to that form, and also having most of the major sensory inputs, i.e., eyes, ears, nose, taste, etc., at a high point of the body. Because it gives you some advantages, but they would have to have some sort, to have got to the stage where they were able to fly a spaceship or design a spaceship and muck about with some technology. Aliens would have to have some sort of appendages, wouldn't they? They would have to have something to manipulate things with. And probably some sort of opposable thumb mechanism. That's one of the big things that set us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom is the opposable thumb. I always think it's funny when aliens are shown with some sort of high technology, and yet they haven't got an opposable thumb for some reason. You kind of like, how do they manage to pick up tools in the first place? I saw that with various space games with insectoid aliens in them. It's kind of like there's no appendages there. You can't just make a mean-looking alien critter and expect it to have high technology. It doesn't make sense. They have to have some way of manipulating tools. So that is an important consideration for aliens. They would have to have or have evolved some sort of appendages in order to make tools in the first place, so that they could then progress onto higher technology forms. So I think that is a bit of a given, but it doesn't have to be arms and legs and fingers in the same way that we recognise them. They could be tentacles. Tentacles would probably kind of work if they had the strength in them to manipulate things. I kind of agree with you on that one, Sean. Physician, we don't even try communicating with the vast majority of organisms. No reason why aliens would even see us as worth attempting to analyse. Well, that's a very good thing, isn't it? So, when I do communicate with my dog, and I think my dog communicates with me, but it's mostly non-verbal stuff, because obviously it is non-verbal. My dog can't talk. I'm even talking about it. I have conversation with my dog, but it's mostly non-verbal. So what words do you talk to with your dog? What does your dog... No, but the conversation with my dog is entirely non-verbal in the direction of dog to human, shall we say. My dog cannot speak, alas. But I do say words to my dog, and I've got no idea if it really understands anything other than basic nouns. But... there is communication of a sort. Okay, so my dog understands some of my meanings. It knows when it's food time. It knows when it's walkies. It knows when it's go round the corner and do a poop. It knows these things. It knows when it's not supposed to be doing something, or when, it also knows to shut up and stop barking. There's there's things like that it understands, so there is some communication there, but there's we don't discuss the finer points of logical fallacies or anything like that. The communication between my dog doesn't reach those levels of heights, it understands a certain amount, and that. But I've never tried, for example, to communicate with an ant. Just hasn't crossed my mind as something that was worthwhile to do. Now, I had no idea whether an ant has got anything useful to say, but I haven't got the means to communicate with an ant, or a rat, or a mouse, or anything like that, because they don't speak. They don't have the ability to transfer information to me on a level that I can comprehend. So I don't know. Those are all sorts of things that I think are interesting. Physician, it's a good point. There's some animals we've never even tried to communicate with, and some animals which clearly do communicate with each other. And I'm thinking things like whales and dolphins and cetaceans and things here. They have what seems to be a fairly sophisticated language. They can have conversations which they stop and start over many month intervals. They figure out new songs to sing each other without apparently any kind of outside communication, yet they all seem to know how to do it. And they're obviously communicating some sort of information with it, which we can't figure out what it is. So, all that sort of stuff is interesting as well. And the thing that used to annoy me no end about cats is that generally, if they meow at the door, it makes no difference how long it takes you to open the door. It'll always take that as confirmation the meowing worked, even if it stopped meowing hours ago and opening the door was a coincidence. Yes, I have a lot of conversations with my cat about meowing, but it's never productive for me. The cat always seems to get what they want. I think the thing is, the basic rule of thumb with cats is you can't outstubborn a cat. It's just impossible. Don't even bother trying. So Sophie's going out. So here's the other thing. Aliens might land, mine our crust, and leave without even caring to notice us unless we try and stop them. So, for example, if you want to build a house and there's an ant's nest there, you don't give her monkeys, do you? You just, I don't know why I put monkeys into it. That's just a phrase. But, you don't care, right? You don't care. If you're going to build a house and there just happens to be an ant's nest there, it just gets bulldozed, right? Whatever the whatever the wonder of the ant civilization that exists in that particular place, we don't give a damn. We just concrete it over, boom, gone. We just plonk our thing down on top of their heads, effectively, crush their entire civilization out of existence, and don't give them. We don't care. Okay, so if an alien species came down, right, we're going to just plonk a thing on the Earth and harvest all its oceans, because that's what they do. They might not even acknowledge that there is any life on the planet at all. They might just do it because, we can. So which is a slightly disquieting thought, isn't it? Yeah, but we're humans. We exist. We have art. We have culture, and we have McDonald's and all sorts of other worthy things. Nope. Boom. We carry on like that to life forms on this planet. The amount of small creatures beyond a certain size that we completely disregard when we are constructing things is we probably you're probably slaughtering millions of things just by going out for a walk. I don't know, so there's that concern as well. I think that's a very good point. What are you doing? I'm looking at its face. See, eyes, nose, mouth. What? Yes, you would look at that bit, sir. Manipulation of controls dictates some sort of dexterity of a limb. Yes, it does. I think that's a good point. Crimson Room. Good evening, Drew and Jack. Good evening, Crimson Room. Good to see you. Your cat tells you to sit in your chair and you let him sit on your lap. Yeah. Yes, I receive my instructions from the cat. Mostly, I get just disapproval. So you're not doing the right thing, Mr. Human. You need to now do the right thing, so I can therefore do what I wish to do. That's basically how cat communication works. It's not so much communication; it's just receiving orders, I think. Desolate art, I like it when they portray aliens like a field of energy as in Star Trek. So yeah, the old amorphous blob of energy is a trope, isn't it? That aliens somehow exist as a blob, a self-contained blob of energy. Again, I don't know how that's supposed to work, but that's quite a common thing. Cats stroke their jaws on stuff and then smell it. If you do this in front of your cat, it reacts in interesting ways. Okay, so if you do this in front of your actually the funniest thing I've ever done with my cat is the old the snake trick, where you let your cat go to sleep and then you put a cucumber next to it. I can recommend that for great hilarity. Because there's obviously something quite deep in cat psyche that certain shapes are basically snakes, and snakes are bad. If your cat's asleep and you sneak a cucumber up next to it when it hasn't noticed, and then the cat wakes up and sees the said cucumber, there's basically it's a snap instinct reaction, which is worth trying out if you've got a cat. I tried it on mine; it was most amusing. Yeah, but my cat, Stumpy says my cat brings snakes home. That's quite scary. Cats stroke their jaws on stuff and then smell it. If you do this in front of a cat, it reacts interesting. My cat, I must admit, my cat does have a morning routine with me. When it's in the morning, it will sit on top of my chair waiting for me to arrive for breakfast. And then we do have to have a little sort of head nodding exercise where the cat will basically sit there going, come on, we need to have a head scratch. And so I have to rub my head on the cat and it rubs its head on me. It's quite endearing, but I'm not quite sure basically if it's sort of re-establishing its ownership of me. Or quite what we're exchanging. But it's something we do every morning, and the rest of our family thinks is a bit weird. I take it as a sign of affection, but I think it's a sign of ownership from the cat. I don't know. Glenn says, I heard someone talking about alien body design, saying a head with some sensory organs is likely for a high-tech race, and the ability to make and use tools, be mobile with using tools, and a neck is not needed. Okay, well, that's quite good. God, the chat's moving too fast. Animals with opposable thumbs include gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, and other variants of apes. Certain frogs, koalas, pandas, possums, opossums. Many birds have an opposable digit, and many dinosaurs had opposable digits as well. Okay, so we're not unique in that regard. That's interesting. We've never tried communicating with trees, moss, mushrooms, mosquitoes. I mean, this is very true. I've never tried communicating with trees. I have given the old tree a hug, so hopefully the tree's at least well disposed to me. But I've never. I mean, how would you go about communicating with a tree? I don't know. Vash Kaibo Spike Spigal says, hello there. It's the first time chat. Hello. Good to meet you. Please explain again how your dog gives you ideas for books, as you mentioned before. It's not so much that my dog gives me ideas. The ideas come to me when I'm walking the dog. Maybe the dog is telepathically transmitting ideas to me, but I suspect not. I think it's mostly the inspiration of being out in the countryside that works. We do know that plants and fungi communicate with each other. Yes, so plants do communicate with each other through fungal networks under the ground. That's quite interesting. And we know ants communicate with each other, and bees. So lots of insects do communicate with each other in terms of at least passing control information between their various different parts, don't they? As a sort of almost like a disparate organism. So that's quite interesting. Most dogs wag their tails to the left or the right, depending on how they're feeling. It's wagging towards the right, it's in a good mood. If it's wagging to the left, it's feeling a bit down. Is it? Okay, my dog just wags its tail all the time, so I can't really tell. My dog's very enthusiastic about everything. Dogs will curl their tails underneath them if they're feeling a bit scared and stuff and things like that. I didn't know about the left and the right thing. That's a new one on me. Okay. Bash Cowboy Spike Spiegel. I have a question as a beginner fantasy writer. If you have a great idea with a lot of factions, how would you go about properly writing it? My tip on that one is to spend quite a bit of time literally just working out exactly what makes the factions. So work out what's unique about them, how they differ, and make sure that you're very clear what all the differences are. Write yourself a bit of a lore bible before you start writing the story. That's how I would do that one. Eric 1024. All that really smelly stuff Jay's fluid interferes with the ants' communication. So you can sort of jam it. Jamming the ants' communication, sir. Excellent. I have many ideas of well-being, though how to write it. Okay, so yeah, that's good. So I mean, I would start with the Bible, and then what I tend to do in those situations is just write some scenes where I bring in elements of the law that I've constructed and just sort of see how it goes. That's certainly been my process. Yeah, and Alan, if you damage an ant's nest, the ants know immediately how to repair it without discussion. So I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? That these little tiny creatures can coordinate themselves so much more effectively than we can. Marvin's going back to dear old Douglas Adams. For heaven's sake, mankind, all the planning charts and demolition orders have been on display in your local planning department. I was enjoying for 50 of your Earth years. Apathetic bloody planet. Yep. Many kinds of ants are protected in Switzerland. Okay. And it could be that you have to pay for moving the ants to the other place. So maybe if aliens come and try and dislodge us, yeah, well, sir, you can't build on the humans' planet because you're going to have to move them. Maybe that's why there's all those alien abductions. Glenn says, I would freak out if I were cut next to a cucumber too. I suppose that's a fairly unusual thing. Bloody hell, where did that cucumber come from? Ah, dear. Very good. Yes, it's transferring. It's transferring its scent. Okay. Good human. Now feed me. Perhaps I should have said with no apparent decision. Yep. Especially if it was a half-eaten cucumber. I can't talk to trees. They're all saps. There you guys are on form today. This is good. How to communicate with a tree. Read a book. Well, I suppose that's a point, actually. I mean, it'd be quite a hard conversation to have with a tree. You start off with it, so you're a tree. Yes, I'm a tree. You humans, I've got a bit of a bone to pick with you, though, which would be an odd phrase for a tree to use, but work with me on this one. It says, yes, you cut some of my friends down and turned them into books. Yes. We have tried communicating with trees. It was very popular in the 60s. Some plants might be able to see. Wow, so trying to read. There is a species of non-parasitic climbing plant which mimics the leaves of the host plant it climbs on. It was thought that perhaps it senses some chemical components in the host plant, but experimental settlements it was shown to mimic plastic plants as well, leading to a theory that a plant can actually see. Wow. Okay, so the more we discover about life on Earth, the more amazing it is, isn't it? And the idea that senses are the realm of animals is outdated. Okay, so plants have the ability to sense certain things as well. I mean, they are alive, aren't they? So it probably doesn't come as too much as well. They just work on a sort of different time scale to us. So what do the trees have to say to each other? The consistency of screwdrivers. Now we're getting to Lord of the Rings again. The caterpillar of the large blue butterfly can effectively speak the language of one particular species of ant and persuade them to take it into their nest. Yeah, so it's all sorts of things like that where, things work, don't they? They figure it out. Humans are the only race that cuts down trees to print leaflets about saving the trees. Very popular. Oh, very good. So I suppose just from aiming to slowly turn this back to writing and wrap this sort of thing up, is that universal translators and communication in science fiction is something that is actually probably could be done better. Now, I think Douglas Adams was brilliant. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. I personally find the universal translator, as in Star Trek, a bit of a get out of jail free card. I think it's too convenient. You're removing some of the mystery of dealing with an alien race by having them be able to speak English instantly, as a result, most of the aliens on Star Trek tend to have political differences with humans as opposed to actual kind of alien differences with humans. Klingons are big, bad, and warlike. Romulans are sneaky and underhand. Ferengi are money grabbing, and all that sort of stuff. Whereas actually, they should actually be a lot more alien than us. Actual proper aliens would be considerably different. And I know the whole humanoid thing has been explained in Star Trek by one of the episodes of Next Generation, but there needs to be more variety in aliens, really. Inside now, obviously that's expensive for special effects and stuff. But when you're writing, if you're writing a series of books, which you don't have to worry about a film or a science fiction TV series, then you can be a bit more imaginative with your aliens and the problems, therefore, of communicating with them. So I think and lots of science fiction has touched on this. I mean, there's the concept of time in here, where we're a life form that, let's say, lives for an average of 80 years. Let's make it nice and easy maths. Okay, so in 80 years, that's our lifespan. Now there could be creatures that live an awful lot shorter lifespans or an awful lot longer lifespans, in which case their communication may happen at a completely different rate to anything that's easy for us to book. I mean, even in fantasy, you have this with the Ents, don't you? It takes a very long time to say anything in Entish, all that sort of stuff. And aliens should be the same potentially. There's no reason why they would speak at a speed that is compatible with us. That's something I haven't even thought of. With the ants, maybe they just speak really, really fast. So that's how they get around. How are we going to fix this nest? Maybe they do sit there in their world for ages, saying, "Well, this nest has just been, those bloody humans have." Have put a shovel in our nest again. What are we going to do? Well, I think we should do it this way or that. And maybe they have lots and lots of arguments, but it only happens in a few milliseconds. So we think they're just really, really organised, but in fact they just speak really fast. I don't know. We're not true at all. It's total speculation. But you could have aliens that speak really, really quickly. Or you could have aliens that take an awful long time to come to reach anything. The Universal Translator can't do anything with that. I mean, if your Universal Translator is connected to an alien who only says one word every 3 weeks, there's nothing the Universal Translator could do about that, is there? So you're going to have to wait. What did he say? We've asked him a question, we'll get the answer in a fortnight. That sort of thing. Whereas in TV and films, all the aliens speak at about the same speed as everybody else. No guarantee that would be the case, necessarily, depending on the metabolism of the creature. So I think that could be quite interesting. So I think there's scope to play around with language. Either you can basically decide that in your universe that everyone speaks one language, or there's some commonality of technological transfer of speech, or there's some telepathy, or there's some magic microbes or nanobots or whatever it happens to be. But you could, if you wanted to make your aliens a much more alien, then maybe they don't speak at the same rate. Maybe they can't be translated into English because the concepts don't translate. They're just too different. In which case, how do you work with them? What's their agenda? All that sort of stuff. Make the aliens more alien. So those are the things. I think that there's more space to space. There's more scope to play around with those sort of things than actually has been done. To flesh out novels and make them a little bit more interesting. More aliens that are actually alien rather than just humans with prosthetic makeup on. Do hummingbirds think we are really slow creatures and they perceive their speed as normal? Well, I think that's a good point. Actually, I don't know. If you try and swat a fly, for example, it's virtually impossible unless you get lucky to hit a fly with a newspaper. Okay, you can hit a fly with a newspaper, but if the fly is wise to you, it will almost always evade you really, really quite easily. And I think I don't know what the speed of reaction of a fly is, but it's fast. Okay, it's faster than we are. So it kind of implies that the ability of particularly smaller creatures is simply quicker. Maybe because their nerve endings can transmit. Nerve endings transmit at a certain speed. I think it's about. I don't know what it is. It's certainly measurable. Small creatures will have an advantage there because their nerve endings just don't take as long to get to the same distances. Whereas you get larger creatures like us, we can only react so fast because our nervous system doesn't work as fast because of the distance involved. So a damp tea towel works a treat for flies. So that's right. And how long is how big could a creature be? And still necessarily have a conversation with something much smaller like us. I don't know. All those sort of things are things you could play around with as aliens in a science fiction novel, I think. If an alien is the size of a sun, it might take a long time for it to speak. Yeah, because it's got a lot of stuff to consider, hasn't it? If plants speak, it's probably very, very slowly, for example. And what do they, what sort of things are important to communicate when you're a plant? Do we dream fast? When you hear a noise in your dream, something happens at the same time when you wake up. You find something. Yeah, I don't know. Those are all sorts of interesting communication. Things, aren't they? Some flies see 6 times faster than us, catching prey in mid-air in less than a second. So there's things like that. Our perception of time is totally down to the fact that we're a certain size on average. Don't we perceive things in a delay of something like 17 milliseconds? So that's quite good. Shadow Wyman says, in Babylon 5, the shadows are a pretty good attempt at an alien sentient species. They aren't humanoid and speak using strange whistling sounds. So so that's quite good. There's a bit more imagination going on, those kind of things. So again, from a writing perspective, if you're going to bring in an alien race, maybe give them a bit more alienness. Have a think about all the things that you can change. Maybe they don't use vocalizations. How do they communicate? Maybe they haven't got facial expressions that you can read. Maybe they haven't got the same appendages. Maybe they don't speak at the same speed. How do you communicate with a creature like that? What's its agenda? What does it need to operate? What's its purpose? Because again, another interesting thing that some things have come across. Star Trek's done this with the Horta. And Elite Dangerous did it with the Thargoids, actually. Your creatures have a different metabolism, or they operate using different chemicals, in which case what they're looking for in space may be entirely different from what humans would find useful or valuable in space. So maybe the aliens have got a totally different agenda to what we expect them to have. We're also evolved from apes, which are quite territorial and work best in small bands. That's our genetic and evolutionary heritage. Where did the aliens come from in your universe? Did they evolve? What simpler creatures did they evolve from? And therefore, what evolutionary hang-ups have your alien creatures got as a result? All those sort of things. So aim in front of fly where the fly will be. Yeah, so that's quite good. Someone suggested that because the galaxy has more stars than the human brain cells, it could be a consciousness on a very, very slow timescale. So maybe we're all part of a much, much larger organism. Because we've discussed on this stream how we are kind of a galaxy of microbes and amoebas and all sorts of weird things that are crawling around on us at a microscopic level. So who knows what the actual total reality is? I don't know. They might not even have physical bodies. Yeah, all the possibilities are there. The Elcor in Mass Effect were very interesting to me. Big quadrupeds with no neck, they don't have a tone of voice. So in order to get humans to understand their emotional state, they literally say it at the beginning of every sentence. Annoyed. What do you think you're doing? Kind of thing. That's quite good, isn't it? So somebody's thought about that and given them a little bit different. So because we can't read their emotional state, they basically just tell us what it is. Wouldn't that solve a lot of problems, actually? Mildly pissed off. Slightly tired. Quite peeved. Bored. That would be so much fun. Don't really want to see you. How are you today? Not you again. Oh, hello. Lovely to see you. Yeah, if your first sentence had to be really honest about your emotional state. Oh, God, not you again. Oh, it's lovely to see you. Yes, that would get you into all sorts of trouble very, very fast, wouldn't it? Anyway, right, my friends, it is time. Nervously laughing so as not to seem out of place. Hello. That would have really helped when I was younger. Yeah, I think it would have totally hacked off. Why can't I park here? Brilliant. Ah, dear. Good stuff. Good stuff. Right, my friends, it is time for me to depart. But thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this wander into the Universal Translator and language communication between alien species and stuff for sci-fi novels. So again, just keep writing. Think of these ideas as inspiration and grist for your mill. Thoroughly entertained. Thanks for the stream. Yay! You've put on weight. You're looking well. Brilliant. Take care, my friends. Have a fantastic week ahead of you. Obviously, see you on Thursday for No Man's Sky. Friday is Star Citizen. Saturday is Wind Commander, and then obviously back here again next week. So be good. Yeah, crack on. We'll have good fun. So take care of yourselves. Have a good weekend. Be good. See you soon, and always Right on, my friends. Take care. See you soon.